Hello, I'm Red Feather Free of Red Feather Free Shamanic Arts. You're watching this video because the law of attraction has brought you to it. This is the conclusion to The Dark Night of the Soul, a Christmas story, which is going to be about the secret teachings, death, disillusion, and the true doctrine of the immortality of the soul, and the infinity of the absolute. As brought to you from readings and excerpts from the King James Version of the Bible, Luke chapter 7, as well as Mark chapter 11, reading from Aleister Crowley's The Book of Thoth, the Atu 15, The Devil, as well as from the collected works of William Shakespeare, A Midsummer Night's Dream, The Speech of Bottom. I'm going to begin with chapter 8, the story of the farmer scattering the seed. One day Jesus told his story to a large crowd that had gathered from many towns to hear him. He said a farmer went out to plant some seed. As he scattered it across the field, some seed fell on a footpath where it was stepped on, and the birds came and ate it. Other seeds fell on shallow soil and underlying rock. This seed began to grow, but soon with it withered and died for lack of moisture. Other seeds fell among thorns that shoot up and choked out the tender blades. Still other seeds fell on fertile soil. This seed grew and produced a crop 100 times as much as had been planted. He said this, he called out, "Anyone who is willing to hear should listen and understand." His disciples asked him what the story meant. He replied, "You have been permitted to understand the secrets of the kingdom of God. But I am using these stories to conceal everything about it from outsiders so that the scriptures might be fulfilled." He says, "They see what I do, but they don't really see. They hear what I say, but they don't understand." He says, this is the meaning of the story. The seed is God's message. The seed that fell on the hard path represents those that hear the message, but then the devil comes along and steals it away and prevents them from believing and being saved. The rocky soil represents those who hear the message with joy, but like young plants in such soil, their roots don't go very deep. They believe for a while, but then they wilt when the hot winds of testing blow. The thorny ground represents those who hear and accept the message, but all too quickly the message is crowded out by the cares and riches and pleasures of this life, and so they never grow into maturity. But the good soil represents honest, good-hearted people who hear God's message, cling to it, and steadily produce a huge harvest. Now, how are they to produce such a huge harvest, 100 times what they're given? Here he tells us how. In Mark chapter 11, Jesus says, "Have faith in God. I assure you that you can say to this mountain, 'May God lift you up and throw you into the sea,' and your command will be obeyed. All that's required is that you really believe and do not doubt it in your heart. Listen to me," he says. "You can pray for anything, and if you believe, you will have it. But when you are praying, first forgive anyone you were holding a grudge against, so that your Father in heaven will forgive your sins too." Meaning your consciousness. If you harbor ill will towards others, you still harbor it towards yourself, and your inner eye will not allow your own forgiveness. You will still harbor a burden towards yourself. Now I want to read from Aleister Crowley's The Book of Thoth, the 15th card of the major arcana, the Devil. And we read, "This card represents the letter Ayin, which means an eye, the all-seeing eye of Shiva, the destroyer, or the all-seeing eye of Horus or Hathor. It represents just what I said, the consciousness, the logos, the seer inside, behind. It's the third eye. And it refers to Capricorn in the zodiac, and we are in Capricorn now. We are in the house of Capricorn, which is, as I've said before, ruled by Saturn and exalting Mars. Saturn is equated with death and the fish, and Christ, and the dragon is equated with Mars, which is also equated with Christ. So both of these symbolisms are directly related to the Bible and biblical stories. Furthermore, I firmly believe that the King James Version of the Bible, which was edited by Sir Francis Bacon, is in code, it is in cipher, and it is in an alchemical language which is only meant to be understood by the alchemists and the possessors of the true secret Kabbalah, and it has with it numerological, mythological, mystological, alchemical, astronomical, and astrological treatises, as well as theurgic magic and natural magic practices, which are written in those pages for the proper eyes to discern, the proper ears to hear. It's all right there. We read, "In the dark ages of Christianity, it was completely misunderstood. I say in the modern times, we're still in a dark ages of Christianity. Eliphas Levi studied it very deeply because of its connection with ceremonial magic. His favorite subject, and he redrew it, identifying it with Baphomet, the ass-headed idol of the Knights of the Temple. The Knights Templar were said to have retrieved the ancient magical knowledge of King Solomon when they were given control over Solomon's temple underneath the rule of the King of Jerusalem. They ended up becoming so powerful within only a couple centuries that the King of France and the Pope conspired to destroy the order, which went underground and resurfaced in the true and accepted ancient Scottish rite of Freemasonry, according to my scholarship. Continuing on page 105 of the Book of Thoth, here we read, "But at this time archaeological research had not gone very far. The nature of Baphomet was not fully understood." See A20 above, the full. At least he succeeded in identifying the goat portrayed upon the card with Pan. And Nietzsche says, all I need in life is Pan and Circe, or bread and art. And as a shaman and a magus, I understand this to mean the sacred sacrament, the bread of life, the Amanita muscaria mushroom, the psilocybin cubensis, the peyote, the cannabis sativa. These are the sacred herbs that we are meant to take into our temple in order to help us achieve enlightenment and or spiritual growth, because we are designed, we are part plant, we are part animal, we are part mineral, we are part fire, water, and air. We are the walking, talking visage of God on earth, in the heavens, period. Continuing, we read, "On the tree of life, A213 and A215 are symmetrically placed. They lead from Tifereth, the human consciousness, to the sphere in which thought on the one hand and bliss on the other are developed. Between them, A214 leads similarly to the sphere which formulates existence. See note on A210 in arrangement. These three cards may therefore be summed up as a hieroglyph of the process by which idea manifests as form, so the Holy Trinity. This card represents creative energy in its most material form. We've been given birth. Capricorn gave birth to the sun. That's creative energy in its most material form, if there ever was. It is the most exalted of the signs. It is the goat leaping with lust upon the summits of the earth. The sign is ruled by Saturn, who makes for selfhood and perpetuity. In the sign, Mars is exalted, showing it is best, in its best form, the fiery material energy of creation. The card represents Pan, Pangenerator, the all-begetter. It is the tree of life as seen against a background of the exquisitely tenuous, complex, and fantastic forms of madness, of the divine madness of spring, already foreseen in the meditative madness of winter, for the sun turns northward on entering this sign. The resurrection begins. The roots of the tree are made transparent in order to show the innumerable leapings of the sap. Before it stands the Himalayan goat with an eye in the center of his forehead, representing the god Pan upon the highest and most secret mountains of the earth. His creative energy is veiled in the symbol of the wand of the chief adept, crowned with the winged globe and the twin serpents of Horus and Osiris. We read in the note, the early Christians also were accused of worshiping an ass or ass-headed god, i.e. Abraxas is the god of the Gnostics. Another story that relates to is Balaam and the story of his ass and having a theophanic vision and seeing the angel. Continuing from page 106, we read the poem, "Hear me, Lord of the stars, for thee I have worshipped ever, with stains and sorrows and scars, with joyful endeavor. Hear me, O lily-white goat, crisp as a thicket of thorns, with the collar of gold for thy throat, a scarlet bough for thy horns. The sign of Capricorn is rough, harsh, dark, and even blind. The impulse to create takes no account of reason, custom, or foresight. It is divinely unscrupulous, sublimely careless of result. Thou hast no right but to do thy will. Do that, and no other shall say nay. For pure will, unassuaged of purpose, delivered from the lust of result, is in every way perfect. It is further to be remarked that the trunk of the tree pierces the heavens. About it is indicated the ring of the body of Nuith. Nuith was the goddess of the night sky, the womb from which the sun was given birth, or from which the tree was erected out of, the tree being a symbol of the divine phallus of God that gives us its divine sperm in the form of radiation and energy that gives life to all things and acts as the standard of life to be transmitted from one form to another. It's the spark. It's the sacred fire protected by the Vestal Virgins. And Capricorn is related to the sign Virgo because it's an earth sign. The Virgin is also following a fire sign, and significant because anytime a fire and an earth sign are combined, it's going to combine and produce storms and rain and lightning and mushrooms, i.e. the body of Jesus Christ himself. The thing, according to John M. Allegro in the Sacred Mushroom of the Cross, the Amanita muscaria contains more of what he calls the sacred divine seed of God than any other plant or animal on the planet. And when taken into your body in the properly prepared body, mind, and spirit, it can take you through the judgment hall and into the fields of Elysium to see the glory of Saturn and to realize what Jesus meant when he said it is not a God of death, he is a God of life. The formula of this, it is important to notice some other correspondences. The three vowel consonants of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, Yod, Ayin. These three letters form the sacred name of God, I-A-O. These three, Atu, the 9, the 0, and the 15, thus offer a threefold explanation of the male creative energy, the phallic force. But this card especially represents the masculine energy at its most masculine. Saturn, the ruler, is Set. And Set, or Seth, is the son of Adam, and the second in the line are the progenitors that lead to Jesus the Christ. He's the ass-headed god of the Egyptian deserts. He is the god of the south. The name refers to all gods containing these consonants, such as Shaitan or Satan. And the god of the south is nothing more than a reference to below the abyss. So we have the light and the dark. The south, we're in the southern point of the cross right now. We're going back up to the northern point of the cross. But we're in what would be the western half, or rather, I'm sorry, the eastern half of the cross right now as you're looking at it. Because we're in the ascending portion, in the rising phase, and in the latter half of the year we're in the western half. So we're in the southeastern portion, the southeastern actually portion of the celestial cross right now. And Satan is only a combination of two ancient gods, also Set and On. The Sumerian god On was the father of the gods. Continuing, we read, essential to the symbolism are the surroundings. Barren places, especially high places. The cult of the mountain is an exact parallel. And the cult of the mountain is nothing more than a version of the cult of the phallus, or the erect symbol, the yoni, if you will, or the lingam rather, not the yoni, but the lingam of Brahma, of God, of the divine creative force, of Ra. The Old Testament is full of attacks. You could call it the shaft, or the hammer of Thor, the shaft of Tengir. Is full of attacks upon kings who celebrated worship in, quote, high places. This, although Zion itself was a mountain. This feeling persisted even unto the days of the witches' Sabbath, held if possible on a desolate summit, but, if none were available, at least in a wild spot uncontaminated by the artfulness of men. Note that the Shabbatai, the sphere of Saturn, is the Sabbath. Historically, the animus against witches pertains to the fear of the Jews, whose rites, supplanted by the Christian forms of magic, had become mysterious and terrible. Panic suggested that Christian children were stolen, sacrificed, and eaten, known as the blood libel. The belief persists to this day. In every symbol of this card there is the allusion to the highest things and most remote. Even the horns of the goat are spiral to represent the movement of the all-pervading energy. Zoroaster defines God as, quote, having a spiral force. Compare the most recent, if less profound, writings of Einstein. And the spiral force being the disc, which is in the pit, the absolute bottom of the cross, the root chakras of the tarot, the discs, as he explains fully further in the book, that the discs correspond to the spiral energy, like the galaxies and the atoms and the stars in the heaven. We are all stars. We are all spiraling galaxies in and of our own self. And if you understand that mathematically in the phi ratio, we are all spirals represented in walking, talking forms. We can be broken down and understood mathematically, but only to a certain extent. Our soul, our mind, cannot be understood mathematically and or rationally. Let me explain this through the words of Bottom in the Midsummer Night's Dream. We read, Bottom, awakening. When my cue comes, call me, and I will answer. My next is, quote, most fair Pyramus, Hey ho, Peter Quince, flute. The bellows mender, snout the tinker, starveling. God's my life stolen hence, and left me asleep. I have had a most rare vision. I have had a dream past the wit of man to say what dream it was. Man is but an ass, if he go about to expound this dream. Methought I was methought I was, there is no man can tell what. Methought I was, and methought I had. But man is but a patched fool, if he will offer to say what methought I had. The eye of man hath not heard, the ear of man hath not seen. Man's hand is not able to taste, his tongue to conceive, nor his heart to purport what my dream was. I will, Peter Quince, to write a ballad of this dream. It shall be called Bottom's Dream, because it hath no bottom. And I will sing it in the latter end of the play before the Duke, peradventure, to make him the more gracious, I shall sing it at her death. So in this speech here, we have everything given to us which I've been speaking of up until this point. We have the ass of the Gnostics. We have death. We have the inability of the profane to hear the message and to understand. And we're clearly given the fact that this vision is beyond human comprehension, beyond our understanding. It is infinite. Here he says it quite clearly. It shall be called Bottom's Dream, because it hath no bottom. It hath no bottom. Knoweth is infinite. Her womb is chaos. It is beyond knowledge of reason and linear time. And that's the true secret, if there is one, so to speak, that Zeus, using the lightning bolt to slay Saturn, accomplished and revealed to himself. Or Indra, using the Vajram to slay the older god. It's the most ancient god has always been time, or Saturn, or Set, or On, and that represents allegorically man's delusion before we became enlightened that time was actually real and that death was permanent. But once we gained enlightenment through the use of the secret doctrines and the secret teachings, the Kabbalah, if you will, which espouses the use of plants and numbers and astronomy and astrology to understand ourselves, that's when we gained true knowledge of relativity, as he hints at in that card. Einstein hit the nail on the head with relativity. Time and space are both wave-like. All things quantum physics has proved are wave-like. So is time. Time goes faster and slower depending on the frequency and the height of its wavelengths, or the difference in its wavelength. I hope that this series of videos has helped you, has maybe shined some light, has lit a flame inside your temple, an ever-burning flame, lit and carried forth by the Vestal Virgin, the protectors of the flame in the temple, and that you share this video and carry it forward, and that also light other people's flames, and share all these videos, and learn, think for yourselves, question authority, especially dogmatic authority like the state, the government, and the religious authorities. Do not have irrational fear of certain things like secret societies. In the modern times, the secret societies like the Freemasons are not at all what the Freemasons were originally meant to be. For instance, if you read Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, published 1871, you'll get an idea and an understanding of what true Freemasonry is all about. In modern times, it's been more or less hijacked by a superficial lot of materialistic people who are out for their own ends. And true Freemasonry is about being out for the ends of humanity, of charity, of prudence, of justice, of truth above all else. And on that note, I will read you this, that your greatest strength is love. And I love you all. All who hear are my mothers and brothers and sisters. Take this message into your heart. Let it grow. Let it fill you with the divine Holy Spirit of truth and light and love. Namaste and in Lakesh.